know by commenting in the box, because these podcast episodes, they stay here on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel now, because this is the first time we're also live on YouTube. And it will remain on here. So if you're watching the repeat, let me know. And if you're here live, if you are tuned in on what is August the 20th, 2020, then say hi. Please do say hello. We've got a few people tuning in now. I've got a guest again this evening. Very excited to have all these guests joining me for these podcast episodes. And I'm going to introduce my guest soon. But before I do that, remember what we talk about today and what we do here in this podcast, this live broadcast, is very much for you as well. So do feel free to comment. And yes, as always, my mother has commented, so we have at least one person here watching. Hi, Mum. How are you? But it's all good. It's good to know that you can hear me anyway. Thanks for that. Sweet. How's it been anyway? Like, what's everyone been up to? How is everything going? How's life? Are you enjoying a little bit of cooler weather? It's definitely cooled down a bit. It was far too hot last week. I can't remember we had an episode last week. I don't think we did. Probably too hot. But yes, tonight we have a guest. I'm just going to make sure this is right. There we go. So I'm going to get on with it and introduce the guest for tonight's podcast. It's going to be a little bit different. We've had A-level results, GCSE results. That's been happening this week, and it's quite beautiful how this has worked out. And more will come of that, and it will all be revealed as we get into it. But this tonight is all about alternative career paths and following your dreams. There's a lot of chat at the moment around like university, around grades, around starting businesses, and whether that's going to be a good idea to do at the moment. And tonight's conversation is very much going to be about that topic. It's going to be about grades. It's going to be about alternative career paths. It's going to be about evidence of what can happen when you follow your dreams and you relentlessly do it no matter what, even when the odds are against you. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're also going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to talk about some cool topics. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to bring my guest in, and you will see her hopefully come onto the screen in 3, 2, 1. Here she comes. There we are. This is Gemma Alcock, everybody. Say hello to Gemma if you're here in the comments, and do let us know that you can see us both. Gemma, just do a little bit of a sound check. Just kind of say a couple of words, make sure we can hear you.
Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Alcock, and I'm really excited to be here talking about my alternative career path and following my dreams.
Brilliant. Hey, fantastic. And I can hear you. Let us know if you can hear Gemma, please, in the comments. Sometimes I just, every now and again, I need to remember to check that everything's working, and it seems to be okay on Facebook. Let's just check YouTube. First for Tommy G Talks tonight, everyone. We are live on YouTube. At least I think we are. We are. Wow, look at that. Sweet. Going up in the world, everyone. Okay. Right, let's get into it. So this is the official kind of start now, okay? Let me get my screen in the middle. Where am I got to stand there? Okay, cool. Welcome along, Gemma. It's great to have you here. And in this episode of Tommy G Talks, I've been looking forward to this one for such a long time. I lined up some guests for the month of August, and I did it a few weeks back now. And I made sure that I had a good mixture of people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, to come and share their story and come and talk about different topics. And it's just quite poetic how this episode has landed on the week of A-level results, GCSE results, all the controversy around like this alumni having their results like all strange because of COVID. And you've also been on TV today. You've also been on Sky News. So why don't you just go ahead and kind of fill the gaps for me? Introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it? And why are we on Sky News today? Go for it.
Okay, cool. So I'm Gemma. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called SkyBound Rescuer, which is an organization that specializes in the use of drones for public safety. So I get to work with emergency services to either start their drone team or improve their drone team. And I get to work with the drone industry to help them create better products and services for the emergency services as well, which is very fun. And then in my voluntary world, I'm the director of air operations for an amazing charity called Lowland Rescue, and they search for missing vulnerable people on behalf of the police forces all across the UK. So we've got 34 teams all across the UK, and it's not just drones that we use. There's dog teams, ground teams, bike teams, any discipline to help find a missing person. That's what Lowland Rescue does, and I manage their air operations, which is from how we train with drones, how we use drones, how we manage the use of drones to find those missing people. So that's what I do. That's my passion. Why I do it is to save lives ultimately. But my first kind of taster of what my career is now was in public safety as a beach lifeguard for another incredible charity called the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, or RNLI. And it was through RNLI beach lifeguarding that I experienced the unique and very profound feeling of saving a life. And it was that feeling that made me realize that I wanted to dedicate the rest of my career to advancing life saving. And so after that, I then dedicated my university dissertation to researching a problem that they were facing, the RNLI was facing, and solving it. And that solution became drone technology. So yeah, the passion that drove the whole thing was life saving, and it still continues to motivate me every single day. Why I was on Sky News, that's something quite different, really. A few weeks ago now, I had the absolute honor of Samsung, a global tech leader, reaching out to me and asking for me to be involved in their Alternative Careers Guide campaign. Now, you've already mentioned that results is, I guess, GCSE and A-level students, they're having to rethink perhaps their university choices, their career paths. And so Samsung wanted to take that opportunity to raise awareness of some really highly innovative careers in the tech world, to re-inspire that generation. And one of those stories that they highlighted was my career story. So I was on Sky News to talk about that campaign and talk about getting my results way back when, and the impact that had on my career. So yeah, very exciting day, very surreal day. I was on a billboard in London as well, which, I mean, that feels very very unreal. But yeah, it's been a great day.
I'm very excited for you, super pleased for you as well. And obviously we've had a bit of chat going on in the background leading up to this. We had to change the day from Tuesday to Thursday just because of the Samsung like prolonging the release of this campaign, this project. So like all this stuff is all great and it's very exciting, but the core of it for you, when you mentioned about the feeling of saving a life and then dedicating yourself to that, and you know, technology gets a lot of bad rap, doesn't it? It gets a lot of criticism. People are very easy to blame some of the downfalls of our society on technology, like short attention spans and not socializing effectively because we're looking at phones all the time, or we're playing games all the time, or, you know, the common kind of cliche things. But what we have here is absolute evidence that technology that we can all have, and, you know, drones have been on people's crisp now for many years, can actually do something so important, like saving people's lives without putting anyone at risk. And that's the amazing thing about it as well, I guess. Like, how did it all start? Like, when did you first get your hands on a drone control pad? Like, where did it all begin?
Good question. So as I say, it was very much a research-driven journey to finding drone technology. So through my dissertation, I found that what the RNLI was struggling with was to find people at night. It takes them 3 to 4 times longer to find a person in trouble at night than it would in daylight if all other conditions were the same. And obviously, we don't have that luxury of time when someone's in trouble, so you have to send 3 to 4 times the amount of assets, lifeboats, helicopters. So it's quite a costly thing. And then I looked at, okay, what's the asset? What helps them? What helps the lifeboats? And they all said categorically helicopters, but only when they're available, right? They're not always available because they're expensive, so we don't have loads of them. But also during the night, from being tasked to being airborne, so for being told there was someone in trouble at sea to taking off, that's an average time of 40 minutes during the night. And then they've got to fly to the search area to start looking for that person. And when someone's in trouble, we always talk about a golden hour, which is 1 hour to find them and then get them to hospital for the best chance of survival. So the helicopters were getting on scene outside of that time frame. So I wanted to give the benefit of the helicopters to the lifeboats, but instantly, which became drone technology. And definitely the research took me there, but it was a happy coincidence that my dad is actually a huge aviation enthusiast, and so I probably have been for a long time too. I've gone to air shows with him. I can't even remember the first time I went to one of those. And so he had a little drone as well, one of the toy ones. I think he had actually bought one very recent to when I was researching. So it was, yeah, I think we learned to fly together. He's a great photographer as well. So but like the first kind of serious drone I bought with my dad, and he was geeking out over the camera and I was geeking out over flying, and it was great. So yeah, that was all part of my dissertation, which was in 2014 now.
Wow. Okay. So just before we go back to 2014 and that kind of time when you were doing that, how common is it now for the beachside, particularly beachside rescue lifeguards, to have like a drone technology there with them at their disposal? How common is that now?
So in the UK, unfortunately, it's still not happening. That was very much, it was a research project. Now that research project has gone to the Coast Guard, so they are progressing, looking at drone technology, but it's not the stuff that you buy off the shelf. It's serious, like almost military level technology that can fly for hours offshore. But in Australia, beach lifeguards are using drones every single day. Interestingly, they're flying to do patrols to monitor shark locations, and all of that information from the drones is going into an app called Sharks Near Me. So beachgoers can log into an app and see where the nearest shark is to them, what type of shark, or useful information like that. So that's why they're using drones to patrol for sharks, but they do have rescue equipment attached that they can drop if they see someone in trouble whilst they're patrolling. So yeah, Australia leading the way. I definitely think it will reach the UK eventually, but at the moment it's more research based for lifeguards. It's the police and fire that are using them operationally.
Yeah, cool. Wow. I mean, that's so interesting. Like for the surfers, that's going to be saving a few people's limbs. For like knowing where the sharks are in the water is going to be a massive benefit for anyone going out on the sea. So talk about the period of your life there where you were studying and you had the dissertation going and you thought, I'm into something that I'm passionate about here. What were some of the challenges that you were faced with, particularly around any other advice that might have been flying about at that time in your life of like what to do when you finish university? And how did you overcome those challenges to stick to ultimately what you were so passionate about?
Yeah, I guess the first kind of challenge was a personal one, and the other one was an external one, I guess. So the personal one was that because I had a design degree, and I think I placed too much importance over what degree I had. I thought, well, I've done design. I'm not the right person to take this forward because I'm not an engineer. And so I was of the mindset, right, I have to do another degree to become the right person, or I have to work for another company. And I was reaching out to companies, and I actually had applied to do a master's at Southampton University in drone design to become an engineer in that. That was a brand new course as well that exists now. And I got accepted onto that. And I was going to get sponsor. Unfortunately, this sponsorship fell through 2 weeks before, so I couldn't actually do the course. And then the external challenge was that when I was reaching out to these companies with this idea that I truly believed in, they were telling me, look, if you want to make money, you like this drone idea for public safety, it's got to be a passion project. You've got to focus on a different industry. It's not going to make you money. But I believed in it, and I knew the world of public safety. These guys knew the world of drone technology, and so I don't think they realized that money could be made while saving lives, right?
Yeah.
You could have both. You could have a successful company because there's so many organizations in this world that are dedicated to public safety, and but they weren't hearing that. They were like, no, it's not going to be a viable business. So that was a huge challenge, and I decided, right, I'm going to do this because, and the thing that motivated me at that point was, although I was getting a lot of negativity from the drone world, the emergency services, they were reaching out to me constantly to hear about my research. I like maybe 2 weeks after graduating, I had New York Fire Department reaching out to me.
No way.
Like, how have you heard of my research? But it's such a small connected community because not many people try and do such radical changes in the emergency service sector, and definitely not in the way I was doing it, in the fact that I was doing it all around research rather than here's a bit of technology and try and throw it upon you without knowing the end user requirements. I was taking it from, right, let's research this and let's work out what best practice looks like first. And no one was taking that approach. So because of that, it was building an awareness. So I decided I was going to take it forward and really believed in my slice of the drone industry. Traveled the world to kind of just raise awareness, talk to anyone who would listen. And now, as of almost a year ago now, public safety is one of the, it's widely referenced as one of the biggest markets with the most growth potential for drone technology. As of almost a year ago, it's kind of just taken off, pun intended.
Very good. I like it.
So, oh, there's so many puns in the drone world. Droning on being the typical one.
Droning on, yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned that there was a lot of negativity from like, the drone community. I was going to say, what were they droning on about? But what was the like what was their beef? What was the big issue? Was it jealousy? Like what was going on there?
It was more that they didn't think it was viable. They knew that emergency services would have probably very similar requirements to military in that they need to use it in any weather, they need to use it for a long time, and that's expensive to develop. And they felt, well, they can't afford technology that big. But actually, a search and rescue helicopter, that's not cheap kit. A fire engine, that's not cheap kit, right? You prove the need.
Yeah.
There is money, because once you've shown the benefit of having that technology, then they can justify the spend. But they were refusing to hear that reasoning.
That is, let's not overlook what you just said, because it actually is a fantastic business advice that actually applies to any industry anywhere. And it kind of ties in with this saying of, you need to understand your vision. It's not up to others to also understand your vision. Like, as long as you know what it is and you believe in it, the rest is for you to show it to everyone as it starts to build and develop. Because when that person or those people were saying, hey, look, there's no money in it, like, it's not going to work, and it's a sad thing, isn't it? Because all they're doing is suppressing your ambition and your dreams. But then there's a debate around, you know, how many young people or just any age individual actually has a good idea, actually has an innovation, versus someone just giving them some actual advice of, look, this is probably not going to work that well. It's a fine line, isn't it? But how did you know that? Well, what was it for you that kept you doing it versus just going, actually, because it must have been tough at some points, you know,
Oh
working.
yeah.
Did you have a job at the same time? Were you working
Yeah.
doing different jobs as well?
So for the first 2 years, I self-funded my company through my beach lifeguard wage. So I'd work
Right.
all of the hours I could
There
on the
it
beach
is.
during the summer, and then still work on the company on my 2 days off a week from lifeguarding, and every evening, and sometimes
Yep.
mornings before I would go onto the beach, and then so that I could afford to then work full time on my company all winter. So yeah, it was tough and interesting times, that's for sure.
And
Money did not exist in my life.
can you remember a standout moment where, because a lot of people that I talk to on the podcast, I know that I've had various moments that are standout moments where you've come very close to choosing a very different path. And in this case, maybe it was you came very close to either getting tempted to go into something more comfortable and more secure. Maybe there was an opportunity that came and you thought, oh, this is quite a good deal, but it's not what I really want to do, because that can be the case sometimes. Or quite often it can be that an individual just gets close to quitting. Did either of those two things ever happen?
Oh, I'm very stubborn, right? So even when I've been like a little bit tempted and everything on paper looks like, maybe I should work for this company full time rather than try and do it by myself, there's just something in me that even if it makes sense to quit, I just can't quit. And
Yeah.
that's good and bad. Don't get me wrong, right? Because sometimes there are things that you just need to let go. And luckily, in this case, my stubbornness saw me through, and there's a few like opportunities that I thought, yeah, actually, I could work for that. That organization. An example being, I love the RNLI, right? That's who started it all for me, and I was working very closely with their innovation team, and to the point where I even almost applied to work as the RNLI innovation team, but it was I don't know what stopped me, to be honest. I honestly don't know what stopped me, because everything was like, you know what, this is an organization I love, it's a charity I love, they like everything they stand for is what I love to do, but something stopped me. So that was probably the closest I came to applying for a different organization. With regards to quitting, I think actually the closest I came, and it wasn't because it was things were going badly, it was because I stupidly lost a little bit of work-life balance, right? And went too hard for too long last year. It was my
Okay.
biggest project, and for maybe 6 months, I was working 12 to 16-hour days every single day, never took a weekend off at all. And I got to the end of it, and like it all went really well, but I was miserable. And
Okay.
so I thought, well, even if it goes well, I'm not going to enjoy it. But actually, like a bit of distance, a bit of rest. And I went to Bali um, for a few weeks. It's where my
That's always
boyfriend
going
lives
to
as
help.
well. So that was always like going to help. And yeah, I think that gave me a bit more perspective. And I was like, I'm not gonna quit. Like it was just I was burnt out.
Yeah.
But that was probably the closest I came to it, because I genuinely thought, oh my god, it all went well and I'm not enjoying it. Um,
Sure.
what's the point? But it really was just because I should have took a bit more time out, rather than going that hard for 6 months.
Well, that's fair enough, and it's good that you can look back at it and you can evaluate that. I think it's really useful in that case. One of
Yeah,
the
for
things
sure.
that actually you might, maybe you know, or maybe it just kind of passed you by, which is possible because not everyone remembers everything in the world that happens, is you and I first connected. Do you remember how we actually first connected?
No, no. How did we
Okay.
first connect?
So you just mentioned about being stubborn, and you also sort of indicated about being competitive and having that kind of fierce nature about you. It was actually a post you put on LinkedIn that came up on my feed, and it was you making parallels between tennis, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it was making
Tennis.
parallels between playing tennis and business, and saying how, I think you asked the question like, "Hey, does anyone out there relate to this? Like, I believe I'm competitive in business because of what I've learned through being competitive in sport." It was
Yep.
something like that, and I remember reading it, and I remember thinking that she's got it bang on here. Like, this is exactly how I feel, and I commented, and I think I said like, go you, I agree, something like that. And then you commented back. And then that's when I saw what you were up to, and then reached out and said, I'd love to have you on my podcast. So I want to kind of hook back to like the younger generation, just because I think that there would be some value there if there's younger people listening. Maybe they're at uni or college, or they're thinking about mixing it up a little bit in terms of their career path. Some people have sport and they can draw from that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too caught up in like what are the connections between sport and business that you can draw from, because I think we could talk about that and it could be a totally different tangent. But what I would like to talk about is, what advice would you have for a young person that maybe just needs to look outside of the classroom to realize that they are good at other things in terms of their own characteristics, their own personality traits, but maybe they're just not noticing that yet? Where else can they draw that from, in your opinion? What advice would you give?
Well, first of all, you can be competitive without being sporty, right? I think that we always we always think that they're doing the same thing, and that's not true. I've got so many friends that are competitive, but terrible at sport, hate sport, and it's like, if you constantly want to be the best version of yourself, and you're constantly at competition with yourself, you're always wanting to improve, then you're competitive, right? So if you've got that trait in yourself, then you'll probably be quite good at business, because or running a business, because you've got to constantly want to be better than yourself, better than you were yesterday, because you've got to stay ahead of the competition, to be market leading. The only way is to improve every single day, even when you're the best, right? Apple or Samsung, whoever it may be, like, these companies don't just get to the top of their game and be like, okay, we're the leaders now, so we can stop innovating. They constantly are pushing, and so if you've got that trait in you, then that is amazing for business. So yeah, I guess that would be my first point. So advice for young people, I guess. I don't know where to go with this, other
Well,
than
you mentioned on Sky News earlier, you gave some advice.
yeah,
The lady on Sky News sort of asked you what
sure.
advice you'd give. I'm going to chuck an example in there for you. I had to retake one of my A levels. I managed to blag only doing 2, by the way, because I made my mind up quite early on that I wasn't going to go to uni. So I just tried to do the least amount of work I could possibly do and focus on my career, right? So that's where we have something in common. I saw what my career path was going to be, and it was going to be based around qualifications, foot in the door, get a job, build from there,
Yeah,
which is what happened in the end. If it had been the other way and I needed the qualifications, I would have approached it differently. But like, the example I'm going to give you is, if someone didn't get the grades that they thought they were going to get, especially with nowadays, like this year, with the crazy kind of disappointment in the air about, well, there is a lot of disappointment for people about not being able to see it through properly and have that whole experience, of doing the last part of their studies and the exams in some cases. What advice would you give someone whose grades weren't as good as they thought they were going to be?
yeah. So the advice I gave on Sky News, that I'll reiterate, but expand upon, is that grades really are just a stepping stone, and as long as your grades get you to the next step of your career, then they've served their purpose. I didn't get the grades I wanted. I got the grades I needed, but I did
Yeah.
not get the grades I wanted, right? And like at GCSEs, for example, I did well. I got 4 A's, the rest B's. But because I'm dyslexic and I love a good challenge, I was determined to get at least one A star and to get an A in English, just to
Nice.
prove that a dyslexic could do that. Right? I did
Great.
not achieve either of those goals, right?
Oh
But I
man,
got
well, you
I
gave
got
it a
I
go.
got good grades. I got good grades, but at the time it was like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world.
Sure.
But it enabled me still to get onto the International Baccalaureate, which is an alternative to A levels,
Yep.
where you do 6 subjects and 3 bonus. They call them bonus topics, but they are compulsory. So not much of a bonus, but it still enabled me to get onto that course. And then my grades from International Baccalaureate, again, wasn't quite what I was after, but it enabled me to get onto my first choice at Bournemouth University. And then at Bournemouth University, what I really, really wanted was a first. I was so bad, wanted a first class degree, and I got a 2-1, and I was like not even 2% off a first. It was gutting, and it was like, I went to my course coordinator. I was like, why have you done this? And it was my dissertation that's turned into my company. I was like, this is like, I thought my project was good enough, and he was like, it is. It's just you went really technical and you're doing a design degree, and half of the great stuff was outside of the marking criteria, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the first realization that although I loved education, I really love education, I'm a big advocate for higher education, I don't think I'm actually that well suited to the education system. And any entrepreneur probably has experienced the same, that we think outside of the box. And thinking outside
Yes.
of the box in education means thinking
Yes.
outside of the marking criteria.
The criteria.
Um,
Yeah.
right? So going above and beyond at school doesn't get you too far, because doing more than what they're asking of you doesn't get any extra marks. But in
Sure.
business, going above and beyond makes you stand out against all of the other competition. So it sucked at that point, but that was probably the first indication that I would be good at business. So
I
they
like
really
that.
are just stepping stones.
That is really cool because people can get so upset and think that that's it, and that the world's over for them and their dreams are crushed because they've missed out. And I was talking to my parents about this the other day. In some cases, you do need certain grades for some careers. Like, you have to have A's, A stars. Quote me if I'm wrong, but to be, for example, a vet or a doctor, you do.
Yeah.
It's just part of the stepping stones for that job. But a lot of the jobs or businesses that we get into, we just need to go through the process, don't we, to get the next part of the next door opens,
Yeah.
and it's there that we can really flourish. Tell me what it was like. Like, I observe, I see some dynamics in the household where the student is being told what they should do by the parents. And then I see others, and this would have been me, the second example. The student tells the parents because they know what they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? What are the strengths of both, and what are the possible repercussions of both, in your opinion?
um I mean, probably a mixture of the two. My house, my parents are, I guess, quite traditional, and when I was like, I'm going to start my own company, they're like, go get a job. um, but again, my stubbornness, I'm like, no, I'm starting a company.
I can almost just imagine,
Um,
like, the pat on the head. Yeah, good.
yeah. That's great, Gemma, but go get a job. Um, yeah, so it was probably for the first, like, I don't know, 2, maybe even 3 years, it would be like, I think my parents were probably won over. Maybe in the second year when I got my first like consultancy contract, they were like, okay, this might make some money. But it's more like my grandpa, that it was like every conversation I had with him, he was like, so why don't they employ you? Like everyone I worked with as a consultant, they're like, so why don't they employ you? I'm like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not what I'm trying to achieve here.
yeah,
So I guess it's like, working outside of the traditions of your family is really difficult, because you're trying to like, you're in unknown territory for yourself, so you're constantly trying to tell yourself, I can do this, and then when your nearest and dearest is saying, might not be able to do this, is a bit weird. But also I can understand that, especially from my mum's perspective, she wasn't thinking of like the end goal of this may be huge and I could make millions, or that she was seeing the here and now. And I was making a lot of sacrifices. I gave up
Yeah.
one of my favorite hobbies that I got into at university was skydiving.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not. My mum was probably a fan of me giving this one up, but she knew how much I loved it. But it's an expensive hobby to keep. And then tennis as well. That was also. I wasn't socializing as much because socializing can be expensive, and I was just pouring every penny into this company, into this idea, and working long hours. And for my mum, from the outside looking in, she was like, this isn't healthy, right? So it was tough to get her on board, but it was from a good place. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I know that some parents are like super strict on, you will become a doctor, you will be a lawyer, and I just can't even imagine that kind of environment. It just, I don't know, like, I guess kids in those environments quite often do become lawyers and doctors, so some people thrive under that, but I just don't know how I guess healthy from a mental health perspective. Like,
Sure.
are you going into a career that you're passionate about, or is it social conditioning? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think it's an interesting debate, and I think that there's an odds game going on. I think for some, that's the right formula. They need that nurturing experience to be able to find what they should do
Mm,
in life, and therefore find that and be that. But if there's that little bit of nagging disconnect and a trade of happiness going on, that's when it can become a problem. And it's up to then the person's tolerance as to whether they see the benefit of being that versus the nagging thought of regret, maybe, or like lack of passion or happiness, or seeing what other people are doing and thinking, man, that's my dream. And it's not easy, and it's actually not easy from a parent's point of view. Of course, it's not easy for anyone in this equation. So there is an odds thing going on there, I think. But what I will say, if anyone who's listening and maybe has a disconnect in terms of what your parents want you to do versus what you want to do, and you find it a difficult conversation to have, there's the way you got to frame it is your parents are going to be right either way, right? So either your parents are going to be right because it's going to be a bad move, and then you come back with your tail between your legs and you go, you were right. And then they go, come here, you little rascal. And then that's it. You know, you've tried, and they were right. And so you say to them, look, I'm going to do it. You're either going to be
yeah.
right, and it's going to be right, or I'm going to I'm going to pull this off. In which case, how proud are you going to be of me when I'm doing that? And then if the answer is, well, yeah, of course, then the parents have nothing to worry about because they're going to be right either way. And it's like, it takes all the pressure off if that conversation can be had. I mean, I'm very, very, very grateful that my parents have pretty much just cheered on anything that I said I've wanted to do or try. It's like, okay, good, as long as that's what you want to do. I know that that's rare. I'm very, very grateful for that. And all I can hope for is that I'm that to my kids. All I can hope for is that I enable my kids like my parents enabled me to do whatever, you know. But yeah, it's one of the biggest talking points, I think, around education and expectation and what to do. And if anyone's in that, I don't know about you, Gemma, but if there's if there's young people that don't know what they want to do, sometimes it can be the loudest vote wins. You know, it's like,
Mm,
well, gotta do that now, go. And then before you know it, you're filling out a form to go to a university and study something that you felt like you had to because you
yeah.
had no other choice. You know, it's not an easy one to get right. But I guess the key thing is that you can change anything at any point.
I think the people that are struggling to work out what degree they want to do, I think often those people are thinking of the long term of like, what
Yeah.
career do I want to do, right? But actually, I say the single best reason to choose a career is passion, and there's nothing more sustainable for motivation than passion is. So even if it's perhaps not that vocational, choose a degree that in a topic that you're passionate about, and the rest will fall into place, because you can make a career out of the most bizarre things. And like, what my career is, it didn't exist when I was choosing university degrees. So who knows, you might choose a degree and develop an industry yourself. So honestly, just choose what you're passionate about. At university, you get to explore so many different things and learn so many different skills as well. So as long as it's all around something that you're passionate about, then that's the degree for you. Equally, for like apprenticeships, internships, just choose something that interests you, and the rest will fall into place.
That's really great. I mean, I'm not sure whether it was, that's really, really great advice, by the way. I'm not sure if it was the Sky News interview with yourself or whether it was something else that I watched earlier along the same kind of topic. But there's this this area of uncertainty around internships and work experience, and the biggest barrier. Oh, I remember what it was. It was a status on LinkedIn again that I read. I think the biggest barrier is entitlement. I think the biggest barrier for the employer and for the young person that's hungry to get into the right place. If there's entitlement, like a young person comes out and they're like, well, I can't get an internship anywhere I want to go. But then you're not just going to get that. That's not just going to happen. It's not actually entitled for you to do that. You have to think about how, and you've got to think outside the box, and you've got to work your ass off, and you've got to phone people up, and you've got to knock on doors, and you've got to see what you can do to get into the right place. And then from the employer's point of view, it's kind of like, well, I can't find anyone good. The amount of other business owners I hear that are like, they diss the younger generation because they're like, there's no good ones out there. But they're basing that on maybe one or two that, if you look at the initial conditions of how that business relationship began, it was dog shit in the first place, because there wasn't that equal trade of expectation, and they're setting themselves up for failure. And it's like both parties need to lose that entitlement and actually look at each other and what each other can do for the greater cause within that 6 months or that year. I've got people, and I've had people for forever, ever since I've employed people. I've always taken a chance on like a young'un, like the youngest one, even if they didn't have the right qualifications yet. I've gone, well, attitude test is there. This kid has the right attitude. It's not going to take much for them to come into our environment and learn from our team and get the paperwork done to be an amazing asset. The biggest example of this is the guy who basically runs my gym, right? Because I don't really do the day-to-day stuff whatsoever, or I haven't done for two years. He came to me on work experience. He came to me as a 14-year-old, and then when he like came into his last year of school, he was like, would I possibly be able to do some work in the summer holidays? We're like, forget that. Do you want an actual job? Like, what do you want to do? We gave him a part-time job, and then he went full-time, and that was it. But in a weird romantic way, that's what someone did for me as well. So it's kind of, you pass it forward. So my last question really is, what does this, because we're talking about you and your experience and the younger sort of generation, but what does this mean for you as you grow even further into being a business owner, an entrepreneur, an innovator? What is the next thing for you? Like, you're achieving so much right now. What's that next milestone?
Oh, next milestone. I mean, that's tough to summarize, really.
I've put you on the spot a bit there.
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess something I haven't explored yet is raising investment, right? That's a pretty important step for a small business to take. So far, I have bootstrapped, which is basically I was funding it, as I said at the beginning, on my beach lifeguard wage, and then when it got to a tipping point where my projects were making enough money that could then take the profits of that project to then put it into my next one and pay myself. And the next stage of my company is a software project, and software is expensive. So no one's ever bootstrapped software development.
It's never ended well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's time to look at investment, which is going to be a huge journey. But through just being in the world of startup life, I know so many awesome startup owners that are already giving me so much advice. I guess once you're a startup owner yourself, you start meeting new people like that as well, like-minded individuals, kind of drawn to each other because it's a weird little world of you're like a workaholic, I guess, and
Mhm.
because you're so like your career is not just your career, it's your passion as well. And so I think entrepreneurs are often drawn to each other because it's something that perhaps if you're not like that, you can't really understand why you need to constantly think and talk about the career that you do. So fortunately, although it's a brand new path for me, I am in a great place to ask these questions to people that have been there, done that.
Yeah, and just from the outside, I mean, it sounds like you've got a really exciting proposition for people, having not had to take on any debt as such to fund where you've got to so far, not having, well, again, from the outside, but from the story only from what you've told us, not having other partners, investors that are already there, because you've not done anything. The I say easy way, you've just worked really hard and kept your belief in yourself because you knew that you were going to get there no matter what, and you've like used all your resources to get to where you are, and that puts you in just
Yeah.
an awesome position. And there's no doubt that in years to come we're going to hear more from what you've managed to achieve, and how much of a difference you're going to make, and your legacy of what you're doing right now, and how that literally has an effect on other people's lives, because it saves someone from literally like drowning, and then that person then goes on to have children, and then his or her legacy goes on, and that would not have happened had your innovation not existed. I mean, it really is amazing. I love all that. And I think you've mentioned you've watched my TEDx talk. That's really fascinating to me, the legacy of the imprint that we can have with our actions, with our words. And what you're doing is special. It really is. So it can be full on all the time when you're running a business, but remember that, keep that really close. It is really special what you're doing. And I just want to have a little moment of silence for my holy stone, for my I mentioned to you
Oh
a little.
dear, R.I.P.
Look at this. This this was my lockdown experience. Look at this. For those of you that are watching,
Oh
there is
dear.
my drone battered to pieces. This here is washing line that we we got we
That's amazing.
stuffed it through a we stuffed it through a potato,
Mm.
and then we launched the potato into a tree to hook the branch to get it down. So if you didn't know about this, ladies and gents, throughout the lockdown period, I thought it would be a nice thing to do to go to the why I thought of going to the woods, I don't know, to fly a drone. But I thought it'd be nice to go outside, take my son with me, fly the spaceship, which is what we were calling it. We're going to go fly the spaceship today. I literally hadn't flown it. I'm too scared to fly it. Or I was too scared to fly it. I don't anymore, because I'm like, it just goes off in the wind, and then you're like, oh, come back. So anyway, I flew it up, and it's all great, and we're waving at the camera, and we're like, look, there's us. And it goes up, and then all of a sudden the wind starts taking it, and I panic, and I press the home button, because the button brings it back to, and because of the
Yeah.
wind, and because it's just a bit confused, and it was probably panicking more than I was. It just flew into a tree, and then it
Oh
just got
dear.
stuck in the tree, and it was in the tree for 6 weeks, like too high. I tried kicking balls at it. I tried throwing sticks at it. We went out there, but it came like a little ritual for me and my son to just go out there and, should we just try and get the drone down again today? And then eventually we got it down, and it's all like busted up. But I thought that was quite funny. I thought I'd share that with you and show you.
Well,
Is that
I've also lost a drone in Canada. It's the only drone that I've ever lost, thankfully. But it was in Canada, and
okay?
the GPS is not great. in well, lots of parts of Canada, but especially where we were flying, because it was in the middle of nowhere. So I had to fly in ATI mode, which basically you switch all the GPS off and it drifts more, and you've got to control it a bit better. And we were at the bottom of this cliff face, and it was near this glacier. It was beautiful, but just the other side of this cliff face was loads of fishing lines, because it was like salmon fishing.
Right.
And I didn't realize that I had flown my drone straight into those lines, and it was all tangled and everything. And I was there trying to bring it back, and it just wasn't moving. So I was putting more and more power into the motors, and then all of a sudden, bam, straight into the cliff face and out the sky into the glacier. I was like,
oh no.
It was
Did you
emotional.
manage to get the footage? Were you recording a video at the time?
Oh yeah, I've got the footage.
Did you pull the footage off? So this is the weirdest thing, right? The way that one works with the app and stuff, usually when I've done a few little bits before, you have to like go and download the footage off. It's not usually an easy thing. I swear it did it in like some sort of like last legs parting gift to me. Somehow it sent me the footage, because I looked on my phone. I was like, "What's this video?" And it was just the drone and like leaves and branches. I actually do have that footage, which I honestly I don't know how it got on my phone, because it's never done that before. But yeah, there you go. So anyway, it's been really great speaking with you. Thank you for coming on tonight. It's been great chatting with you. If you are listening to this and you're listening live and you've been here with us for either part of or all of our broadcast, then do let us know. Maybe share a comment. We have had some comments in here from Angelina. She was just laughing at, I think, the drone story. Carlton, Rhonda, Ryan, Jackie, Paris. So thank you all for tuning in this evening live. And if you are listening to this on the podcast, then do tag myself at Tommy Gentleman, and Gemma, what is the best way for people to contact you on social media?
So probably my company Facebook, which is SkyBound Rescue Project.
SkyBound Rescuer Project on Facebook, and just drop us a little comment if you're listening to this and you want to know more about what Gemma's up to. Then go check out her social media pages. I'll drop some tags in the description of the episode. And once again, Gemma, thank you so much for being here this evening. Keep doing such an amazing job. Keep innovating. Keep believing in yourself, and keep saving lives and just being awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet. So that's where we'll end the podcast. Was there anything that you wanted to say, or anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't know. I think that's everything.
Yeah, covered quite a lot of stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's a good chat.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'll probably, and this is often the case, and there are still people watching, by the way, but that's fine. They can get an insight into how the post-production systems work from the guy that wanted to do the least amount of work in his A-levels. What we'll do now is probably change the title, because I think we talked about alternative career paths. We did, and we talked about following your dreams, but I think it's important to highlight what you're actually doing. You're saving lives through the use of technology. I think is amazing. And then we can also maybe subheader with alternative career paths. I just think there's more depth to what we talked about than just what you could do after you finish university or school.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sweet. Well, I won't keep any more of your time, Gemma. I'll chat to you in a minute on the messenger.
1 o'clock now. I've earned my wine today.
And apologies, it was longer than I said it would be, but that's because we were jamming. Enjoy that, and I'll chat to you in a bit.
Thanks.
All right, ladies and gents, it's just me and you now. How are you? Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you had. Hope you took something from it. I think what she's doing is amazing. It's massively inspiring to hear anyone doing something that they really believe in, doing something that's a bit different, and doing it against the odds of what people expect, what people say, the opinions that other people have. And I guess one thing that you can take from this is, what area of your life are you maybe holding back in, where you feel like you could do more or do something differently, but maybe all you need is to just give yourself a little bit of permission to have that little bit of courage to just give it a go and see what happens. Whose opinion is stopping you? Is it someone in your family? Is it your friends? Is it your social opinion of yourself and reflection of yourself? But whatever that is, you've got to overcome that, because life's too important to not do the things that will ultimately lead you to happiness. Okay, so thanks for watching. Next week, I have another guest. We're going to be changing the time, and that's because this dude, he lives in Australia and he's not a morning person, he tells me. So that means that we're not able to do it in our UK evening time. So it's going to be UK daytime, sort of late morning, but I'll give you plenty of notice. And the guest that I'm going to have is a guy called Thomas. He runs a YouTube channel called Thomas in Action, and he is my long-haired homie. He's the guy that has created this following, this group, this social media safe place for any man who wants to express himself through growing his hair. Sounds weird, doesn't it? But I promise you, it's really inspiring. His story is really helping many people across the world to embrace who they really are. And anything that helps us to overcome challenge and increase confidence is worth talking about here on Tommy G Talks. So thanks for being here. I will chat to you guys real soon. Stay tuned to Facebook for announcements on when the next episode will be, and to ask any questions in advance. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, then go do that, because that's where we usually do a little bit of like pre and post episode chat, and that is at Tommy Gentleman. That's where you'll find me on Instagram. Alrighty, have an amazing rest of the week, and